What is going on, guys? Jack here, and welcome back to Park to Prem here with Town or Town. Today it is episode 58, it is the end of season 7, and well, that means we've got our little end of season recap. Today though, we're going to be doing something different. I'm gonna try and make a new approach with these things. I want to go into more detail, cover more important stuff. You guys can let me know what you think of it. Today, there isn't going to be a match to end the season, simply because the league was kind of wrapped up going into the final game. Of course, we already suspected that might be the case after last episode. And well, you can see here, looking at how the league finished, whilst it wasn't a flawless end to the year, we ended up getting the required results. And despite a defeat to Chesterfield on the last day of the season, we did run out league winners, and you can see that here. We finished ahead of Bradford by 3 points in the end. Losing on the last day of the season, they also lost on the last day of the season, but there was going to need to be a 5-goal swing, as well as a 3-point swing in the end of season match. I didn't think it was going to happen. The good news is for us, it didn't happen, so that's that really in terms of the league. As I said, something new today. I've got a little hit list. You guys can let me know what you think. Hopefully it covers lots of detailed stuff that I've maybe not covered before. I feel like traditionally the end of season episodes here have been, I don't want to say throwaway, but they've been a slight afterthought. And certainly with this series and with series going onwards on the channel here, I would like to do the end of season recaps in a way whereby if you're someone who stumbles across the channel halfway through a series, or maybe you fall off a series and you fall behind by a few episodes, I know it happens, you feel like you could just watch the end of season livecom episodes where we kind of do the season recaps and know what happened that year. That's going to be quite challenging because I don't want these videos to become too bloated. Of course, if there was an end of kind of season match, the last game of the season included, that's going to make the episode even longer than this one is. So maybe this branches off and becomes its own little thing. I know some YouTubers do that. I just feel like it's nice to have a good retrospective look at the year that's just gone by in lots of nitty-gritty detail, because ultimately Football Manager is a save about the details. So anyway, let's pretend if this was any other season where we've done the last game of the year, that we've just done it. We've finished the game, we've looked at the league, we've won it, woohoo! And, well, let's now review this season. And while this was season number 7 here at Town Law, of course, last year we were promoted into the Football League via the National League. We finished 3rd place, but won it in the playoffs. You may remember we dispatched of Swindon and then Chester in order to get promoted alongside Stockport County. And at the start of the year, and certainly I think during last season when we were in the National League, I discussed my thought that the League 2 kind of standard really isn't that far ahead of the Vanarama National League. In my opinion, the actual jump up is one of the smallest jumps up in football. And I feel like that's somewhat shown by the fact that neither ourselves, of course, but even Stockport, who won the league, have ever been in danger of being relegated. In fact, we are two teams who have settled quite nicely into the kind of league system. And well, if you look at the League 1 table here, you can see you've got certain clubs like Ebbsfleet, for example, who did achieve back-to-back promotions. In fact, it's not Ebbsfleet, it's Fylde, who secured back-to-back promotions. So this is something that is doable, and it was my aim going into this year. Season number 7, first in League 2, back-to-back promotions. Let's see what we can do. And at the halfway point, if we're being honest, it felt like it was always going to happen, at least in my eyes. I feel like we made some really good additions as the season went on, which we'll come on to shortly, which really strengthened our campaign. But from a very early point, once we got settled a little bit, I felt like the new signings that we made really had a good impact on things. At the start of the year, I wanted promotion. We got that. And going into the year, of course, we made quite a bold decision to ditch our previous tactic. That previous tactic, of course, being the 4-2-4, which if we just have a quick look at here, was something that we had used for the previous 6 seasons with very good success. But I was beginning to get a little bit worried that against teams who have a lot of creativity in the midfield, operating without a centre attacking mid or a centre defensive mid, it might come back to bite us in one way or another. And whilst this system playing quite direct at times, trying to get the ball forward quickly, playing quite fluid, expansive football, it's great, but against more disciplined and higher quality teams, I wasn't as convinced it was going to work. So, of course, we made the decision to switch to a 4-2-3-1, and with that change, tactical changes were required, and transfer changes were required. Of course, we delved quite a lot into the market Michael Jacobs, for me, was one of the biggest kind of signings that we made. He was a player who I was really hoping would kind of crack it on and just be this incredible player for us. In the end, 11 goals and 7 assists from midfield is a pretty good contribution. But of course, just looking across the general pattern, at least when it came to our transfers, obviously a lot of younger punts for the future, a lot of free transfers we leaned upon, and then we picked up a real plethora of clubs or players who were released by Championship and kind of League One clubs. You kind of look here at the likes of Leon Coyle, Turno Ballo, Rush, Timmy, Embleton, and some of them made really, really big impacts for us. And we didn't sign a ton of fantastic new top quality first team players. Sure, there was definitely some standout ones, but I feel like when you looked across the team, players like Smolyo, Gannon, DKM, Stewart, who of course ended up being top goal scorer, they were players who were part of the team going into this league. We put faith in them, and they very much repaid that going into this year. So, of course, just looking at the final league table and how things looked, we did superbly. We continued on with our trend that I think has been here since the beginning, that we love to score goals. Every season, I feel like we end up being the top goal scoring team in the league, and that's kind of just how I like to play. You get managers like Roy Hodgson and Sam Allardyce who feel like a victory is started with a clean sheet. You can't lose if you keep a clean sheet. I look at it more like you can't win if you don't score. Two valid thoughts and very, very, very different thoughts at the same time. But especially in Football Manager, it's a game I feel like you can't ever really successfully defend with a super deep kind of low block of 2 lines of midfielders and defenders in Football Manager and expect load of success. So instead, I'd rather just go gung-ho and, attack on the front foot. And that's what we did this year. And well, if we just have a look here, we can have a look at the end of season review. So Smolyo has been inducted into the overall best 11, which is absolutely superb. And in terms of end of season awards, Leighton Stewart, fans player of the year with 41% of the vote, then Mampala in behind. Very interesting this, because of course Mampala and Stewart last year had kind of played up top alongside each other, and I wasn't entirely sure how we were going to balance things out. Switching to a 1-striker system when you have 2-star strikers is not necessarily advised, and as a result we did start training Mampala to play out on the left, but it's not really worked out. But for these two players to both be in the the running for fans player of the year gives you an idea of just how good they both were. You can see here, Stewart did end up getting slightly more goals, and goals per 90 minutes definitely better in favour of Leighton Stewart. But at the same time, the fact we managed to make these 2 strikers work is fantastic man management, if I might say so myself. I know Mampala complained a little bit about lack of first team football. I do worry about his wages on £3,000 a week, whether or not that really justifies, sitting on the bench for almost half the games that we play in. I'm sure that would be a point of contention, and if we were more cash strapped, maybe I would have to look at that and go, well, Leighton's on, what is it, 16% of the wages? What you've got to keep playing him more. But obviously that isn't a problem we necessarily have here, and it's quite a good problem to have, I guess, when you have 2 good goal-scoring players. So to see them doing well is superb. You can see DKM came runner-up with 20%. Fair play to him, 14 goals and 12 assists. Let's not forget that in the National League North, I was very, very underwhelmed with what he did with us in his first half a year, but giving him a proper pre-season last year worked out well. I wasn't sure if he was going to be able to step up in League 2, and it was down to players like DKM, Leighton Stewart, Mampala, who did make that step up. Ultimately, they were the difference makers this year. It wasn't like we had a superstar signing we made that completely changed our season. The core of this year's success was built upon players who were already at the club. That said, Andre Dazelle, he deserves a mention because he joined us in January, and if there was a difference maker, it was this guy. He came in as a deep line playmaker, averaged a 7.35 average rating. I mean, when you look across things here, a 7.35 average rating is just absolutely crazy. Didn't get the most amount of assists or goals by any means, but just as a deep line playmaker at support, yes, he has obvious gaps in his game when it comes to his physicals and some of his technicals. But on a playmaking basis, you are not going to get many playmakers at this level better than this guy. And yeah, definitely a player who I'm really excited to see kind of kick on next year and see what he can achieve. You can see currently judged to be a leading player for League 2 sides. I guess a big question this year is going to be, players like Mampala, Stewart made a step up last year. Can the new players we brought in during this year now be the players to step up like those that preceded them? That is going to be very, very interesting. You can see here, Leighton Stewart won Young Player of the Year. I forget the fact that he's now been here 5 seasons and he's chipped in with 100 league goals in all competitions. He hit the 100 mark, 27 assists, 26 player of the matches as well. I mean, regardless of where this season and this series goes from here, I feel like Leighton Stewart has written himself into folklore, and I love the fact that people tweet me when he's scoring for kind of Liverpool's under-19s team. They've said, "Oh, have you seen that Leighton scored and James Norris has assisted him?" It's just really cool to see. And I do feel like if Football Manager's got anything to tell us, we should probably keep an eye out for him. Of course, he has signed a professional deal recently with Liverpool. Anyway, Johnny Howard, goal of the season versus Port Vale. Let's drink it in. Let's live it up. And then we're going to go to my personal awards, my awards that I want to give out to the players. You know, we let the game do its awards. I feel like I can come in with a slightly different perspective. But first and foremost, let's enjoy this goal from Howard. He scored a few bangers this year. Apparently this was the pick of the bunch. I mean, yeah, I feel a need to applaud it, which is usually a sign that it's a very, very good goal. That is a crazy volley in a 3-0 win that we got against Port Vale there. So, I've just alluded to it. My awards for the year, and I want you guys to give your votes in these categories in the comments. So we have Player of the Year, Surprise Package, the player who was kind of unexpectedly good this year. A player who maybe we thought wouldn't be very good, turned out to be great. Most improved player, so the player that's developed the most during the year, and maybe a few runners-up for that. Clubman, who, in my opinion, is the player who served the club well. So for you guys, that could be a player who's done well in live comms, has, developed a personality trait that you've enjoyed through this series. And I like to believe that some of these players do become characters as you watch this series. And the last category we have is Disappointment of the Year. So, my Player of the Year, who am I going to give it to? I mean, when you sort by average ratings, there's lots of names that stick out. But my Player of the Year that I'm actually going to give it to is Rush. And that might seem like a really weird pick, but I do feel like during our time here at Towler, the right back position has just forever been a bit of an issue position for us. And I feel like finally in this guy, we've got a player who's really going to, I don't know, I feel like he can really make a difference for us over the next couple of years. Of course, can play a load of different positions. So I feel like even if we were to, go from League One to Championship, he would still be a very good squad player. But at 23 years old, big question marks over his large wages when he joined us and his lack of consistency. He got 11 assists in 40 appearances. I feel like an assist every 4 games as a wing-back is pretty good, and that is a very, very good contribution, which I don't think has been matched by any of our other players. Of course, during the season, we did change our wing-backs from being wing-backs on attack to being wing-backs in support. And I feel like that really did benefit this guy a hell of a lot, perhaps more so than James Norris. Didn't have the craziest average ratings by any means, but his assists came in a lot of big games as well. And so, for me, my Player of the Year. And, well, in terms of surprise package, do I have a surprise? This will be a weird one because some of you won't be surprised, but actually, I would give it to DKM. The surprise package of the year for me is DKM. I did not think he would be able to get close to the kind of numbers he put up in the National League. And that was why, at the start of the year, we brought in players like Ballo. Obviously, we brought in players like Jacobs as well. McAllister. I brought in a whole host of attacking midfielders. And if you were to tell me, actually, DKM was going to be the standout player of our attacking midfielders, I probably would have laughed at you at the start of the year. So, DKM, take a bow, my friend. Come collect your trophy. And then we're going to move on to Most Improved Player. And there's kind of only one player for this category. It's got to be Smolio. He's improved so much again this year. Of course, we rejected a £5.5 million bid. If we just compare his kind of all-time development here, I mean, look how crazy this development's been for this guy. He's kind of 19, going on 20 quite soon, if I'm not mistaken. +4 in aerial reach in his time at the club. And if we look at his improvements over the last year, continue to make fantastic improvements, including in the mental category, which is really, really good. And whilst he hasn't had the best average ratings on the pitch, I feel like that's to be expected for goalkeepers. For me, he has been the most improved player. In terms of runners-up, I feel like Gannon probably deserves a nod. You could easily have given Zach Gannon the Surprise Package Award, because last year, I was a bit underwhelmed. And there was even a point, I think, during last season's end of season livecom where I was discussing the fact that maybe we needed a new centre-back and that Gannon wasn't good enough. Gannon's been good enough, everyone. He really has been good enough at this level. A 7.07 average rating, not the craziest, but still very much above average. Obviously, played 42 of 46 league games as well. I think most of those that he missed were via suspension. I've still got this eternal dread about the fact that he's listed as being injury prone, but we're going to just put that to the back of our mind and hope that it's a non-factor and that he's going to be fine. But yeah, for me, I think Gannon would be the runner-up. In terms of Clubman of the Year, now this is kind of open to interpretation. My Clubman of the Year is a player who's already won an award, and it's going to be Smoljo. And it's going to be Smoljo based on the fact that not many players would have a bid of £5.5 million rejected for them as a League Two player and then not kick up a fuss about it. Damir here has been a great sport. He's not complained once. You can see here his happiness and stuff, just absolutely superb. Delighted to be part of the core social group, influential player, doesn't kind of complain. Even when we've rejected a few transfer bids that have come in, he's not made a fuss. I'm more and more convinced that he might end up being a one-club player unless we got like an offer that I can't refuse, which still is a concern in the back of my mind. But yeah, Smoljo for me, Clubman of the Year. And then we come on to Disappointment of the Year, and you might be able to guess who this player is going to be because we've not really talked about him a great deal in episodes. I think it has to go to Alexis Sanchez, everyone. Perhaps not entirely by his own fault. Because he's retiring at the end of the year. He came in as a free transfer on £650 a week. I wasn't necessarily expecting fireworks, but he was still playing for Chile's national team. Obviously, if we look here, thigh strain in December, knocked him out for 6 weeks. Prior to that, gashed up a leg, twisted knee. You know, that he had a great start as well. I felt like in his first 3 games, he had a goal and 2 assists. And at that point, you're thinking, a goal contribution a game, we've struck gold. He just didn't play after that point. The injuries definitely hurt him. His physicals just continued tumbling down. I have been trying to sign him as a staff member, but he wants to go to a more prestigious club, which frankly I feel like is a little bit of an insult, but I'll look beyond it. But yes, Sanchez for me, Disappointment of the Year, and if I was going to give a runner-up, and we won't tell him this publicly, it would probably go to Ballo. He's on £3,100 a week, and as I said, we signed a lot of attacking midfielders this year, hoping for big things. He did get a bit unfortunate. He missed the start of the year for a broken lower arm. He then got a calf strain and was out for 5 weeks. So maybe you have to give him the benefit of the doubt going into next year. But given his wages, I was hoping for fireworks, and in the end, he ended up being a sub by the end of the year. He just wasn't up to snuff. But I feel like we've got to give him another chance. An injury-free season, see if when we do give him opportunities, can he step it up? So anyway, let's go to a little team and player overview, and we'll start by looking at the League 2 team overview stats. So we've already talked about goals scored. In fact, we'll go to team detailed, although you can see a few of the stats down here, like average possession, which we did relatively well in. And I feel like the most interesting ones of these, to be honest, are actually the ones at the bottom. So salary per year, of course, we are bankrolled. We are owned by a tycoon owner. That happened last year. And we do have the second highest wages in the league. Quite significantly so. Obviously, Wrexham top, and they spend almost £1 million more than we do. And we're only spending 2.27 million by comparison. So the fact that they ended up finishing 5th this year kind of shows that money can't necessarily buy you success. I don't want to say that too prematurely because they are still in the playoffs. But certainly, from my point of view, I feel like the wages being as high as they are was an added pressure and an expectation that I was going to win the league. I feel like as a human player in Football Manager, you can usually do quite a good job of hunting out bargains and spending less than other teams to get a lot more in terms of quality. It's something that I feel like we always do here at WorkTheSpace in the series that we do. So when you're the second highest spenders, you expect big things. We did that. Of course, if we look at transfer spend, we didn't spend much money at all. In fact, we made £55,000. But then when you look across the league, only one team spent a load of money. Again, it was Wrexham. We had the lowest average attendance in the league, an average attendance of 1,000 fans. I'm a little bit confused because the Ironworks Stadium, you can see, has a capacity of 2,750. My understanding is that League 2 and League 1 and the Championship and above has a minimum of a 5,000-seater stadium. I have a sneaking suspicion we might get kicked out of our stadium. I saw someone tweet me a fact that they were doing a towel or save like mine, and they had to relocate outside of the Ironworks ground. I think they went to Gateshead Stadium, maybe. So that's something that I'm kind of curious about and cautious about, because at the start of the year our capacity was 5,000, but then we had loads of seats installed, and the seats take up more space than someone standing, so the capacity went down. But I think we might get booted out of the Ironworks, which will be interesting to see how it has an effect on attendances. Our highest attendance of the year was 2,695. If we could get a few more that high, that would be quite good, but considering how much that is above the average, that was the exception rather than the rule. Obviously, you saw the average possession. We were right up there with 55%, which is good. The board value that, and they rate that highly. In terms of goals scored, we were right up there. On the whole, we were a very, very good team. Discipline-wise, we've always kind of had our problems. It's been something that we've had ongoing problems with. If we just look, there's definitely cards somewhere. You can see it, we're right down there on tackles, but in terms of discipline, it's always been a bit of a problem for us, which is bizarre. I think we don't put in many tackles, we have a lot of the ball, but then when we do give away the ball, we pick up a lot of yellows, which I think is just down to the fact that as soon as we give away the ball, we're straight in there pressing away. That might be something that I want to evaluate longer term, because I do feel like it hurts us. You might have caught, in terms of attacking stuff here, 11 goals from indirect free kicks is a really impressive amount. Almost 1 in 9 of our goals comes from set pieces, 9 of them from corners. I wouldn't say that we have the best kind of aerial ability in the league. Embleton has 9 heading and 14 jumping reach. By comparison, Gannon has 8 heading and 16 jumping reach. In fact, if you were to look at our centre-backs, you would say that's a problem, that heading. But actually, in terms of making the most of corners attacking-wise, we've been very, very good for it. And in terms of conceding, well, we've not been that great there either, to be fair. We've conceded 8 indirect free kicks, which also includes corners, if I'm not mistaken. Where we've only conceded 3 corners, but the free kicks apparently are where we come unstuck. But anyway, in terms of player stats for us, obviously we talked about the top goal scorers. Leighton Stewart, by the way, in League 2, but he was up there in the goal scorers. He's actually slipped off right at the very end. You can see DKM up there with the assists. But yeah, Stewart here with 18 goals. You have to wonder, if he'd played as many games as some of the other players in the league, how high would he have been? He was getting a goal every 118 minutes. You can see here the players above him playing significantly more football and scoring less goals in the same amount of time. I hope he can forgive me for that. I would be a little bit annoyed if I was Leighton Stewart. Of course, Mampala close behind, DKM and Jacobs chipping in with a hell of a lot of goals. Jacobs was a bit of a slow starter this year. As the season went on, he really started to find his groove as our centre attacking mid. And hopefully that can continue. He really looks strong there, and I'm going to be putting a lot of faith in him going into next year that he can do more of that for us. So, yeah, those were the big kind of surprises. You can see here, in terms of assists, Rush's 11 was quite significant. Mampala with 8 assists and Ballo with 7 assists. Not small amounts. You could argue I'm a little bit harsh on Ballo, saying he was a disappointment with only 7. But I feel like, I don't know, I expected just huge things from him and he never quite delivered. I'm not going to delve too deeply into these, but I know some of you are absolute stat nerds. So here is my stats squad view. I don't use this nearly enough in my own time, to be honest, but I'll just have a quick scroll through. If there is an interesting player stat that you notice and observe, please let me know. Maybe there is something here that I am missing. Of course, all these views were available last year in FM. I did do a video. You can probably find it by searching WorkTheSpace custom views on YouTube. I'm sure you'll be able to dig it up. But yeah, I feel like some of these views can be very, very useful for spotting trends and stuff. So here's an in-depth stat view. I would go through these all, but some people say I talk too much already, and this has already been quite a long video covering lots of stuff. The last thing we want me to do is do a 20-minute breakdown of all the different stats and what they could mean and how we should change things going forward based off them. Maybe we'll do that as a Patreon tier thing. If you're a Patreon supporter, don't expect that. Just to be clear. While we're on that, actually, Patreon supporters. Thank you to everyone who does support me on Patreon. I think at the start of the year we had something like 7 people supporting the channel. In the last 2 months it's gone up to almost, I want to say to 35 people, but that sounds wrong. But a really high number. I think it is 35. It's been a massive jump up, so massive thank you to you guys. If you are at all curious, I don't really mention it in videos. You get your name in the credits. Check the link out down below if you want to, see more there. We do have some Patreon, Discord stuff. I want to do more with Patreon and things. So, yeah, keep an eye out for that at the very least. So, yeah, those are the team stats. I know some of you love it. We're not going to cover that today in too much detail, but I do feel like it's worth just having a look at the dynamics of the team. And on the whole, just very good across the board. There's lots and lots of green here. One unhappy player. Who is it? Who is the unhappy player? Name and shame them. Who is, I don't know who it is. I mean, logic, I don't know who it is. Who is unhappy? Which one of you people is just mad? I don't know. Who answers on a postcard? I love the fact that you can't just tell me by mousing over. That would be far too logical. But on the whole, cohesion, absolutely superb. If we look here at the hierarchy, Sanchez, Mampala and Warrington leading the way. I'm very surprised that Warrington and Sanchez are up this high. Warrington, of course, an ever-present player over the last few years. This year, fell off the pace. The reason for him not being my disappointment of the season was I never really expected him to live up to what he'd done in previous years. And to be fair, you can see he started the season strong, and over the course of the year, he just faded out of favour. So don't expect to see him here at the top for much longer. Same with Sanchez. I assume they're up here versus some of these other players, just based on the fact they've got determined or spirited personalities, but I would not be surprised to see the likes of Stewart climb up, potentially Norris climb up, DK or Gannon could certainly find their way up there. I guess the good news is that we have players at pretty much every tier of the hierarchy who, are well filled. It can be quite difficult if you don't have a team leader or you don't have many influential players, and, a few players get unhappy and you don't really have the option to ask the teammate to solve the unhappiness. I find if you have a really good leader, and Mampala's definitely been good for this year, player comes to you with a little bit of an unhappy kind of reasoning for being unhappy, talk to Mampala, talk to your squad leader, can you sort the problem for me please? Most of the time they do a really good job. Mampala's definitely been part of that. Will be interesting to see how this changes over the course of the next year or so, because Sanchez and Warrington are definitely not going to be here come next year. That is almost a certainty. In terms of social groups, poor Sanchez is out on his own alongside Forster Kasky. I feel like Forster Kasky's time has come. I mean, he could definitely be up there for disappointment of the season, to be fair, but I will stick with Ballo. But yeah, Forster Kasky, he's the highest earner at the club. He played 14 games. He played awfully. I need to get rid of him. To be honest, I don't think we're going to get anything close to his value because of his wages. I will probably just try and sell him for anything that I can get for him over the summer, just to get him off the wages, because I do feel like he's massively, massively overpaid. On the whole, happiness is very good across the team, particularly with the players higher up the hierarchy. There's nothing worse than having one of your team leaders get unhappy, but you can see here right now, the players who need to be happy are very, very happy on the whole, which is obviously superb. Code of conduct, I mean, this stuff just never really changes. We can do the team meeting for the end of the year. I'm going to say with the right additions, we can avoid the drop. I feel like next year, and we'll come on to this in the next section of the video, I feel like we can get higher than avoiding the drop. But I know what Football Manager's like, and the players don't have the same ambition as me, so I'm just going to play it safe. I've learned that from previous years. So anyway, little look at the team overview before we have one or two last little things to get through. As I said, I'm not sure if I'm going to do this every year. You guys can let me know if it's too much information, too much talking. I know some people just want quick 15-minute videos straight into matches, but I feel like the end of season videos should be quite detailed and should cover quite a lot of stuff, but it might not lend itself well to being tacked on the end of an episode that starts with a match, because then it will be really, really long. At the same time, this is the first one of these we've ever done, so maybe I'll get quicker at doing them, and I'm sure there is stuff that's popping into my mind as we go through this stuff that I want to talk about and haven't necessarily, mentioned before. One other thing, and I wish I'd remembered to talk about this a couple of episodes ago. As you know, I've been a bit unwell, so I'm going to put it down to that, but it is just my own incompetence. I was linked with the Sheffield United job in the Championship. They offered an interview. I rejected it. I wasn't that interested in Sheffield United in the mid-table Championship sides. But for those of you wondering about, what's been happening, job offers, that is the first job offer I've had in 7 years of this save game, which is a little bit surprising. But at the same time, I had a look at it. I wasn't particularly interested in it. It wasn't a particularly appetising job. It looked like a big rebuild at Sheffield United, which I'm not all about. So anyway, I want to talk about the club overview stuff in terms of general. Hopefully, in the future years where we're challenging consistently at the top of the Premier League, we will see new rivalries form. At the moment, it's just Concept, one of our rivals who were left behind when we unloaded some leagues. Tyrell Palmer, still their key player. I'm kind of shaking my fist at him thinking, you left me all those years ago to join our local rivals. Still not forgiving him. Look at how his career has gone downhill. Average. It's what you get. You could have been built for greatness, Tyrell. Instead you went to them. But yes, in terms of other stuff, I feel like the most important thing to look at is legends. And here we are, alongside Henry Kumwenda. And eagle-eyed viewers may have noticed that for the last game against Bradford, I did play him. I did. And I also played Sonny Best out on the right and Ferguson out on the left. Because why not do that? I mean, they're not very good anymore, everyone, is the first thing to note. So for all of those in the Sonny Best Appreciation Society and the Ryan Ferguson fan club demanding that they get first-team football or demanding that they get one last chance on a big stage, I gave it them in League One. If we have a look at that game against Chesterfield, it wasn't against Bradford, of course. Bradford were the team we were facing off with at the top of the table. We played them. I sub most of them off, except Sonny Best, who got a 6.5, but Ferguson on a 6.2, Kumwenda on a 6.3. That they probably won't play again until we get to the Premier League. But for now, they're in the museum in the under-23s. But as you saw, they are listed in the icons and favourite personnel. You can see Stewart has appeared on the icons, which is good. In terms of favourite personnel, Mampala, Warrington, Ferguson, Mr. International, who of course has signed with us as a youth coach. So cool to see him listed as a favourite personnel and at the club. Malcolm Boxall has made his way onto this list. Been on loan at FC United this year. Done okay at FC United in the Vanarama National North. That's kind of his level. We'll keep him in the museum and maybe loan him out for a few years. You can see here, season ticket holders, 141. I'm hoping that will go up next year, but that remains to be seen. I know a lot of people have raised concerns about how low our attendances have been here at Towlaw. I do feel like it's necessary to remind you guys, we're managing a team that is based in a town with 2,500 people and would be the smallest team ever to compete in the English Football League. The fact that a fifth of our town's population have been coming to our matches on average, or even higher than that, about a quarter of the population of the town have been coming to matches, in my opinion, is a small win. And so it's quite good. In terms of facilities, you can see here, the training and youth facilities, I've not been able to upgrade. I need to get that sorted, but we just don't have the money right now. The good news is that junior coaching and youth recruitment, we have been able to upgrade consistently. We've reaped the benefits of that slightly, I feel like. When you look at the under-18s, there are definitely players like Colin Henderson who joined at the club this year who could be very, very good. I don't think they've got any interest in them right now. Northampton apparently might be interested. They are a championship team, although they finished rock bottom of the championship. Keep an eye out for him. He was the best pick from the intake this year. I feel like I played him down a little bit in terms of how good he could be. He actually looks relatively solid for our level. I'm hoping that in the next 20 years we'll have some homegrown town heroes join the team and just be superb. That's not the case right now, I don't feel like, with our current setup. In terms of affiliates, of course, we've got the affiliation with Cardiff. Not really any opportunities to link up with them. They are only going to be one league above us next year, so part of me is thinking maybe I should look for a Premier League affiliate if there is one available. A step up above, that might well be worth doing. We'll have to wait and see on that one. And finally, a quick look at the club record books, where, of course, we have got our 7th promotion in a row, so expect there to be another dot with a green line linked. I do feel like League One is going to be a slightly different step up. It's a shame that we couldn't win the league last year, but I want to keep that green graph and that gradual rise going up and steady as long as we can. But it'll be interesting to see how we can manage that going into League One. You can see here, if we look at competition overview, here's all the stuff we've won. We've not really talked about it too much. Landmarks here as well. Crowned League 2 champions. This we've looked at a fair bit. You can see here how our stadium capacity was increased. I thought it was to 5,000, but maybe it was only 4,000. But then it's been decreased, even though it says increased, with all the new seats being installed. In terms of records, there's probably some here that people are going to be interested in. Most league goals is currently Henry Kumwenda. Leighton Stewart has the most appearances by a player. Kumwenda with the most goals in a season. Max Haygarth, highest average rating with a 7.79. Playing for Wrexham, doing his thing. Since he left us to go to Wrexham, it would be fair to say that his career has somewhat stagnated. Only 5 assists this year. Not particularly good. Voltman has the most goals in a game. He got 4 against Baffins. Was it Milton or Minton? I can't remember. If I remember correctly, he got them all in one game. He's a player whose contract expires at the end of the year. I don't feel like he earned a spot in the museum, so he may be released. I mean, you can let me know, Voltman, in the museum or out of it. City best most assists by a player with 20. Nathan Harker, who of course is still in the first team with the most clean sheets in the year with 27. And Leighton Stewart, 11 player of the matches. Way back when in 2022 is the record. Brownhill is apparently the top the youngest goal scorer. He has retired. Alexis Sanchez, by the way, our oldest goal scorer. That is more, I think, a testament to how young our players have been on the most part rather than how old he is. Although he was almost 37 at the time. You can see some of the other records here. Most have all been set while we've been at the club. Biggest win, a 9-0. Highest gate receipts, 67,000. Highest attendance that we've had in our time here at the club was actually against Bradford. Of course, that was ourselves versus the team. Going very strong in the league at the time. The fact that we had almost 2,700 fans there is great. Never forget December 10th, 2019... when 77 fans turned up for a game against Jarrow. That was one for the record books. In terms of highest fee received, Gouda, highest fee received. Of course, we sold him on, and we'll have a quick look at how he's done since he went to Sheffield Wednesday. He played once for them, and Sheffield Wednesday, if I'm not mistaken, I think they got relegated. So make of that what you will if it was a good move for him. Will Sheffield's profile load? Will we get to see the championship table? Come on, Football Manager, you can do it. Pedal faster, everyone. Yeah, they finished 23rd in the league. Their prediction was 16th as well. So a little bit surprised for them to go down. And there's a few players here who I recognise, like Josh Sims, who is definitely not a League One quality player. If we're playing them in League One, that could be a really tricky game, especially with them kind of predictive finish. Highest transfer that we've spent is Jacobs. Was he worth the money? I feel like we won't know the actual answer to that for a couple more seasons, but to be fair, in the grand scheme of things, £69,000 isn't the most crazy sum of money now, is it? Anyway, quick look at the staff overview. I never really talk about the staff much, but we have a very big staff room team. We've not got a great deal of change in this. You know, it's been pretty consistent for the last few years. I find some people want me to talk about my staff members. In truth, what tends to happen with my staff members is I sort them out and then they're good for about 4 or 5 promotions, at least in this save they have been. I'm sure down the line we will need to improve them further, but on the whole we have a good little coaching staff. Special shout out though to Craig Fletcher, my assistant, who has now been at the club. If we just look at his milestones, he's been at the club since 2020, joined us 6 years ago, and look at all this coaching he's been doing. He's been flying up through the coaching ranks, as have we. If we can load up my profile, which is another screen that takes a long time to load usually, we do have a Continental Pro license now. I don't think we can get a higher qualification than that. Our attributes look like this. They will hopefully continue to steadily climb. If someone can tell me how to improve my working with youngsters, or if it's even possible, please do. It's stuck at 1. I don't think that's moved since we joined. So everything else though, general improvements across the board, and our reputation is now up to almost 3 stars. We are considered fairly good. That seems like a backhanded compliment, doesn't it? Fairly good. Anyway, contract's up at the end of the year, or at the end of next year, so we should probably ask for that to be renewed. Can we do that? Board personal new contract. Financial status is insecure. They are right. I'm hoping that when the official end of season comes around in January, this will solve itself, but that remains to be seen. And I think we've covered everything I wanted to cover in this first bit. What I'm now going to do is we're going to do a preview for next year. So I'm actually going to go until around that June time. There'll be a few bits that have changed. We're going to talk about targets for the next season, young players that I'm hoping will be breakthroughs. And I'm also going to make a prediction for next season. And I want you guys to join in on that. So, Future Jack, take it away. Let's go forward and have a look to what Season 8 might entail. So, folks, we are back. It's the end of May. I've not gone forward that far, but the League 2 playoffs have concluded. Burton 3, Crew 1. Yeah, Burton getting promoted with us. Of course, Crew were one of our big rivals throughout the year. They fell off the pace. And, well, as things have transpired, they're not going to be following in our footsteps into League One, which is just a bit of a sad time. If we just look at the club info screen, you can see here, as I perhaps suspected based on what someone had told me, we have moved stadiums. We have moved to the Gateshead International Stadium. There's an athletics track. I hate having an athletics track around a stadium, around a football pitch. The stadium and stands just feel so far away from the action. The good news is, capacity of 11,800, so that should do us quite nicely. We're going to be renting it, which I'm not sure how bigger an impact that's going to have on the kind of revenue that we make. You can spy here perhaps the fact that our transfer budget and wage budget look a lot better. The good news is the board have solved all our financial issues, everyone. Yes, we're up to £472,000 in the black. Take a screenshot of it. That hasn't happened very often during our time here at Town Law. If we just look at income for this month, £1.8 million in investments. So we can talk down Alexander all we want. He has come through, he has stayed true to our word, and he has invested some money, which is offering us some good flexibility for next year. Of course, targets for next year. I told the players, as you saw in the end of season meeting, that I kind of just wanted to avoid relegation. I feel like our team is good. I think a lot of it is going to come down to, can we make some good signings? Can we sign, one or two players who make an immediate impact for us? My lofty ambition, I feel like, is League One playoffs. I've had a look at the teams who have gone down to League One, including that Sheffield Wednesday team that we talked about. They are very, very scarily good. You can see here, Hull City missing out on promotion, Coventry down here, Ipswich, a team who got relegated down to League One, have kind of just been stuck. Sunderland, not a dissimilar story. You can see this year Portsmouth really walked the league quite comfortably. It's going to be challenging, that's for certain. One thing you'll notice, by the way, is the fact that I think this is down to the database and not Football Manager, but for the lower league database. Of course, Bury have folded in real life, so one fewer team is being relegated this current season in real life. The way that Football Manager handles it in this database is it never is able to add that extra team to League One. So as a result, there are only 23 teams in the league because of Bury not being there. Please let me know if that's down to the database or how Football Manager handles things. Either way, not a big difference maker for us, but just, something worth being aware of is the fact there is one fewer team in League One, which means that mid-table is a little bit smaller. But yeah, expectations this year, I would love next year to get into the playoffs. That would be a really good achievement. I feel like League 1 to League 2 is a bit of a step up in terms of the best League 1 teams are very, 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 very good, because usually they are the teams just getting relegated from the Championship and then going straight back up. But I feel like behind them, kind of, I want to say the fifth downwards, I feel like they're a lot closer to one another, and that's where we should really be challenging. I do feel like we have some pretty good quality in our ranks. If we just look, excuse me, at the ultimate squad view, Smolio, if we just look at him, is considered a League One quality player. More players like him bringing in, in the summer, and I think we're going to be in very good stead. So I'm talking about positions and where we might want to address things. In terms of the starting 11, this is kind of what I've plotted out as where we need to fill gaps. And you might have noticed it before because I was doing it in the first part in my head. But this is what I've settled on. I think one attacking midfielder and we're in a good position. We've got the option to move Jacobs out to the right and then leave us with a centre attacking mid. But I just feel like we've got players like DKM, who's considered a League One quality player. We've got players like Dazelle, who is considered a leading player for League Two sides. I think he's undersold there. I feel like the game looks at the fact his physicals aren't that great rather than reviewing him as how good is he actually as a deep line playmaker. Players like Embleton, who we've secured on loan for another year, he is considered, if we look here, a League Two level. I disagree with that. I feel like he's better than that. Similar story across the team. Maybe this is blind faith, but I feel like when you look at players like Liam Coyle, he looks to me like a League One ball-winning midfielder. Maybe he's not the most complete footballer in the world, and that's what the game judges him on. You know, the fact that he hasn't got the craziest technicals in other areas. But in terms of the jobs that we want these players to do, they're very, very hyper-focused in on those areas. You know, Dazelle, for example, probably is only a League Two quality box-to-box midfielder. I feel like as a deep-line playmaker, though, you could almost judge him to be championship quality. Now, maybe that's pushing it slightly, but that's kind of how I view my perspective on things. You guys can let me know if you agree or disagree with that, because I feel like that is kind of up for contention. But on the bench, I feel like we need maybe a new versatile defender, namely a right back, to be honest, because we have got Needham, who can play left back and centre mid. And I would love to get in another centre mid, maybe a slightly more mobile one. So if we do need a box-to-box midfielder or a player who, you know, can inject a little bit of pace, we have one there. That's kind of the immediate areas of concern. I feel like I'm being quite realistic given our current transfer budget and wage budget. We've not got a whole lot of money to spend. We can maybe afford to bring in one or two really high quality players. But without selling someone on, we're not going to be in a position to make anything happen. If I was to sell someone on, I know there's one name that is immediately jumping out to everyone, and that would be Smoljo. There are teams interested in him. It will be a saga, I'm sure, over the summer as to will he leave, won't he leave. Of course, he's still got 6 years left on his current contract. We don't really need to sell him. He is a very key player for us. There is part of me, though, thinking, man, if we could get £7-8 million for him, that would allow me to invest in, you know, good areas in the team. Although we're only going to get 5% of any transfer revenue as transfer budget. So maybe that's a big reason not to sell him. We'll have to see if we can maybe negotiate that up. I'm still not entirely decided. I feel like a lot of it will come down to what players can we get immediately. One thing that is just worth being aware of, guys, I don't think I've mentioned this before. Obviously, I've mentioned removing leagues before. I'm going to be removing the regional first divisions at the end of this year, and we're going to be adding France, Germany, Italy, and Spain into the mix. I feel like as we climb up into the leagues and we start to manage in, you know, the upper echelons of England, hopefully, and moving on to European football, it would be good to have these nations loaded in. It will just mean that all the teams in these kind of top leagues have kind of full squads of players as opposed to the grayed out virtual players that kind of are just used as placeholders when you have a smaller database size. One thing that does mean is that there will be players who generate who don't have a period of history between 2019 and 2026. So one of the reasons why I don't like normally to add these leagues in is essentially because it will add players in who weren't loaded in previously but are real players, but then quick kind of sim the last 7 years of their career prior to the nations being loaded. So if we make some new signings and you notice the history missing, that's why I did and ah about it, but I feel like in terms of making Europe more of a challenge when we get there, but also maybe opening up opportunities for slightly more adventurous signings from afar, having a few more of these leagues loaded would be quite good in that regard. In terms of our hopes and aspirations for this year, facilities need upgrading. We need money from somewhere. I don't know where that's going to come. Maybe a Smoljo sale, maybe some investment from the board. These aren't going to be good enough. I'm beginning to get that sneaking suspicion we might need to get to the Premier League or at the very least the Championship, get a load of TV money in, and then that be how we are able to sustain ourselves and upgrade these facilities. But shorter term, I feel like I've kind of just got to grit my teeth and bear it. Of course, if we could, it would be great to upgrade the junior coaching and youth recruitment. Those have a significantly lesser cost. Youth recruitment and academy coaching, at least my understanding of it, don't quote me on this, academy coaching will impact the current ability when a player generates at the club. Youth recruitment impacts their potential ability when they generate at the club and how high it could possibly be, or rather the chance of it being high. You could have the worst youth recruitment in the world and there is still a very small chance that you'll get some incredible regents. If we could get that improved a little bit more, it would help massively. Of course, we're at that new stadium, almost 12,000 fans all-seater. We're renting it. not ideal, but, you know, we'll kind of make do, I guess. In terms of one of the final things I want to talk about is kind of breakthrough players for next year. Players to be aware of that could become big factors. And there's one man who definitely sticks out to me, and it's this guy, Andrei Shvetsov. He will be joining the club when he turns 18, which is on the 12th of September. He's a player who generated as a free agent. You can see here, he looks absolutely incredible. Currently plays at a League 2 level, is an incredibly consistent performer. There is just one issue. He doesn't have a work permit, and I can't apply for a work permit until he joins us. I didn't think players from Russia needed work permits to play in England, but apparently they do. That might be a problem. Of course, we've got Matthew here, the Canadian who joined us during this year. Great player. Would probably like him in the first team. Doesn't have a work permit, so we can't register him in our squad. If we can't get him registered, I might have to look to sell this guy on. I don't really want to do that with Shvetsov because you can just see, looking at his star ratings, he could be very, very good. We kind of need that superstar striker for longer term. As great as Stewart is, as great as Mampala is, I don't know if they're the long-term solutions in the attack. This guy, 12 off the ball, 13 finishing, largely solid physicals. Looks like he could have very good composure, decent passing as well for a striker. I need this guy in the first team, and if he gets to the first team, he could turn into the outfield Smolyo. Of course, Mr. Dessa also worth keeping an eye out, but he isn't going to be registering with us for a couple of years yet because he's only 16. Other young players, Yao Martins is going to be joining us over the summer. Could be an exciting player, 17 years old, Portuguese youngster. Not entirely sure he'll be knocking on the first team door come the season kind of turning around. We had a load of players go out on loan, you might remember this year. You can kind of see all the players out on loan highlighted purple. Some of these were younger players who we signed a few years ago with potential. Had we been stuck in League 2 for another year, maybe they would have been squad players for us, but as things stand, I feel like they've all kind of missed their chance to feature in the first team and we've maybe got to move them on. The exception being the two new French lads who signed for us recently. Baumann can play left back, left mid and centre attacking mid. Striker even, not centre attacking mid. I'm actually trading him to play as a wing back right now. I feel like he could be quite good there. We also have Melvin Erekart, who is definitely a left winger, not a left wing back. Not quite of the same immediate kind of current ability, but has really good potential, could be a championship player. So maybe he could break out into the first team come next season. Anyway, this has been a very, very long video, so if you've got to this point, I'm trying to think, tell me what your favourite colour is alongside your player of the year and all that stuff. So I know that you watched this point. You can just be at the end of the video, at the end of your comment, just write a colour. The one last thing that I'm going to do, and you guys can join in on this, is make a prediction for next year. It could be where we finish in the league, what happens, what doesn't happen. And I wish I'd thought about this because the plan will basically be that is that next end of season review, we can look back at my prediction I made in this one and say, did I get it right? So my prediction for this year is going to be that we make the playoffs in League 1. That's my prediction. I don't want these to always be league positions. It could be something funny that happens, like we get an incredible youth intake. I have a son in Football Manager, you know, in our youth intake. It could be that we have an injury crisis at some point. But for this one, I'm going to play it boring. I'm going to play it safe. League 1 playoffs. That, I think, is a realistic goal if we can make the right additions. And, to find out if we make the right additions, you'll have to tune in again tomorrow. But anyway, folks, this has run on slightly longer than I wanted to. If you've made it to the end, thank you for watching. Something different. Let me know what you thought of it. Stuff that we could cut down. I know some of you love to hear me talk. Others don't like to hear me talk. For those of you who miss Leon Live, maybe they scratched that little itch. And it's going to be all from me. I feel like it's good to do these end-of-season reviews. Maybe not in quite so much detail, but we'll do some figuring it out. You can let me know your thoughts on it down below. Drop a like if you've enjoyed that. Lets me know more than anything that you've enjoyed this video. I'll see you again soon. It's me, Jack, and I'll talk to you guys in a bit for season number 8.